Go, it's official. Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Wilson, and I'm serving as your facilitator for today's meeting. Before we get started with everything, I want to maybe just go around the room real quickly. If you could mention your name, your title, and quickly who you represent or what you do, so we can get familiar with everybody's faces and just go from there. So, Joel, if you want to start us off.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joel Kramer, and I'm the agricultural specialist at the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County. We're based in Lakeside.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Corey Uden. I'm field representative for Assembly Member Marie Waldron.
Good morning, I'm Tasha Ardalan. I'm the program coordinator for the San Diego Region Irrigated Lands Group.
And I'm Sherry Ryan, City Planning Faculty at San Diego State University and part of the research team with Joel.
Robert Terrace, Operations Manager for Rainbow Municipal Water District.
Jorge Reyes, I'm just a small wine grower, or not grower, but I guess a grape grower, trying to grow grapes. And I got an invite and I thought, hey, I was going to see what's going on. It's my first year doing this, so I'm trying to learn as much as I can and meet as many people as I can and see what happens, with my little place there.
Well, I'll be at your place at noon.
Good, I can use the help. I got a lot of work to do. There's no wine yet, but a lot of work.
And I'm Ruth Reyes. I'm Jorge's wife and an assistant on the small little vineyard that we're trying to get back, giving it tender loving care to get it back.
Garrett Cooper, I'm the Deputy Director for the County of San Diego's Department of Agriculture, Weights and Measures.
My name is Teddy Grangetto. I'm a crop advisor for Grangetto Farm and Garden Supply and also a grower here in Escondido. I'm Ernie Clem with Frank Conine Dairy, KD Farms, Semperwell Valley, farmer for 54 years in the valley.
My name is Eleanor Walker, and I manage the County of San Diego's Waterscape Rebate Program.
I'm Darcy Cook. I'm the district manager at Mission Resource Conservation District.
Good morning, I'm Caitlin Wells, program coordinator with the County of San Diego's Solid Waste Planning and Recycling section.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Moss. I am a sustainability planner for Planning and Development Services at the County of San Diego.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Roman. I am the principal engineer for the City of Escondido Utilities Construction and Engineering Department.
Jody, Priscilla in the back, you want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Priscilla Mumpower. I'm an analyst at San Diego Tech Paso, collaborating with the RCD for San Diego County on this grant.
My name is Cody. I'm the Ag Outreach Assistant, and I work with Joel and Priscilla and Sherry on this project.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for being here today. Looks like we may have a little bigger group than last week, so I appreciate everybody coming out. And real quick, I'll just give you a quick introductory about myself. And it's nice to see some county reps here because that's where I came from. And so real quickly, my expertise in professional service dated back about 17 years ago when I got started in Supervisor Diane Jacobs' office and worked as her land use advisor, fire advisor, and liaison to a bunch of policy issues, and one of them being ag. And so she was very instrumental in a lot of the programs that we see that are in place today at the county level. I remember going all the way back to 2006, her bringing the boutique winery ordinance for the tiered winery ordinance. That led to the equine ordinance update, that led to the beekeeping ordinance, and then ultimately in 2017, the county's ag promotion program. So all of those are in place, which are here to promote and protect ag. But we're here to kind of elevate that conversation, elevate those regulations, elevate those policies, and hopefully collectively as a group together, we can kind of put some more effort into promoting ag. We're obviously all here for a reason. Ag's important to us. We realize the importance to ag to the region. And this program, the San Diego Agricultural Planning Program, is aimed to put all these stakeholders, all of you together to collectively put our heads together and come up with a robust dialogue and come up with maybe some solutions or some initiatives or some policies or programs that either we can expand on or create new that would better promote and help ag in this region moving forward. Part of the process is having some of these working group meetings. We had one last week with focused on land use accessibility. This one's water, which we all know is probably maybe the most important or vital component to the ag community. So it's good to have everybody here today and get our collective thoughts, and we're gonna have a good meeting where we can all have that conversation and see what we can do to better help ag. We have a few presenters here today. Everybody has their agenda in front of you, I hope. If not, I think there's a pile over there near Darcy. Okay, she put it over by the water. We'll have 4 presenters. And then after the presenters, we will have a discussion of project proposals to look over existing policies, rules, regulations, or maybe come up with some new ones like I mentioned before, and see how we can ultimately be beneficial to what we're doing today. And so our end goal is to have us maybe kind of narrow down maybe a handful of things that we could move forward with on putting some working groups together. And ultimately Joel and Cody will be putting together a study, and the end game will have a document that we can share with local agencies and share with municipalities and elected officials, or people that have the ability to make change, and have a document or a study and say, hey, here's what our recommendations are, or here's what we've come up together as a group in a study that we can help promote and better protect ag. So again, thank you everybody for being here, and we'll try to get everybody out of here by noon, if not earlier. And so I first want to bring up introduce some of our main partners, and I'll start with Priscilla, who mentioned she's with LAFCO, and she can help explain what her role is to the program. And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you're going to be hearing a lot of thank yous. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. We're super excited to be here and kind of get that policy phase rolling. You'll learn a little bit about the tasks in just a second here. So again, my name is Priscilla Mumpower. I'm an analyst with San Diego County LAFCO. We stand for Local Agency Formation Commission. And I'm just going to briefly go over what LAFCO does. We are a regional planning agency, a political subdivision from the state of California that focuses in on regulatory and planning duties for the benefit of curbing urban sprawl, preserving open space, and protecting agricultural land. And so with that said, we have a great interest in ensuring that we're doing our part in contributing to the protecting of agricultural lands, which is why we're here today collaborating with the RCD of Greater San Diego County on this really important grant. So again, thank you for your time. So I'll go over a little bit of what, I think it's me.
I'm not the tech guy.
Okay, there we go. There we go. So to give an introduction on SALC. So SALC stands for the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program, which is a component of the California Strategic Growth Council's Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, where they focus in on benefiting agricultural communities. And it is funded through the California Climate Investments Program, which uses cap and trade auction proceeds to projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Some of the principal goals of SALC is to, one, protect at-risk agricultural lands, and then also to avoid increases in greenhouse gas emissions. And these funds are designated with 2 programs, and I think actually there's a third, which I'm not too familiar with, but there's the Agricultural Conservation Acquisitions Grant, and then what we're doing here today, which is the Agricultural Conservation Planning Project. And so back in 2020, San Diego County LAFCO as lead applicant, in collaboration with the RCD of Greater San Diego County, went ahead and submitted an application with the Department of Conservation, and we were awarded a $250,000 grant to go through June of 2023. And so we started work in June of 2021. And since then, we've established some key partnerships, one being the Mission Resource Conservation District, and I think we have Darcy here today, San Diego State University, so you heard from Sherry Ryan, you'll hear more from her later, Food Shed, Community Health Improvement Partners, also known as CHIP, and DUDEC, as well as Adam Wilson. And so we're working all together on these key tasks, and those are up on the screen as well. So of course, grant management, but also we've gone through a mapping and GHG analysis, leveraging of programs, projects, and policies, community outreach, and then the final strategic vision plan, which is hopefully going to help move the needle on these important topics. So thank you again for being here, and I'll hand it over to, I believe, Adam.
Awesome. Thanks, Priscilla.
Thank you.
I always joke with her if it's a blessing or a curse if everybody knows or does not know what LAFCO does, but nonetheless, they do good work. And thank you for being here and presenting that quick overview of what we're doing. Thank you. Next, I'll bring up, who's that? Joel with the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego, and he will highlight his role in the program and take it away.
Hey, everybody. So I just want to give you a little overview of where we're going in the next few months, like where this meeting fits into the total policy task of this grant, and why we're doing all that. So firstly, Cody's going to dig more into the outreach phase that we did this spring. But what we came away with after talking to producers was a whole list of frustrations, needs, impacts to their operations, and we asked ourselves, which of these can we reasonably address? And so firstly, we wanted to know, is there already a program addressing this need that we would be redundant with? And then secondly, we've only got about a year left in this grant, so what can we reasonably accomplish in that time? And so from the many topics that Cody will dig into, the three that we're here talking about are water availability, as we're here to talk about today, as well as last week's land costs and access, and then next week's labor availability and quality. And so this kind of fits into this whole process over the next few months. We started in May and June with San Diego State helping us to draft an inventory of the policies in San Diego between all the different jurisdictions that affect agriculture. And so you'll see in your packets a draft inventory or a list of many of those different policies. If you see something missing, we're open to your suggestions. But that is feeding into what we're doing here, which is 3 public meetings over the course of July, and those 3 topics to dig into of all those policies, what are some individual programs that we can develop as part of this group to actually address some of those needs, to demonstrate that we can actually build out new programs or adjust existing regulations so that we can work towards a larger goal of regional change. And so after these meetings, if you look at the green section, we're going to go back to the drawing board in August and think about what is it actually going to take to implement some of these ideas that we talked about today. And those bigger ideas may end up in a report that we'll deliver to policymakers. But some of those smaller ideas that we can use as models, we hope to actually implement with the group. And so in September, we're going to come back together, all the participants, to talk about a strategic plan of what are those priority policies that need to be addressed, and then start working on them. And so this is how we hope to do it. We'd like to have a working group set up for each of those 3 topics: land access, water availability, and workforce development. And in each of those 3 working groups, we'd like to have an agricultural stakeholder, an agency decision maker, and a supporting organization present. And with those 3 parts, we feel that we'll have not only the expertise and the decision-making abilities, but also the resources to fund some of these projects and to connect people to outside contacts. So that's why we're glad to be discussing things with you today. We're going to start big picture and then whittle down to what's tangible.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it. And then next, we will bring up Sherry Ryan with San Diego State, and she will walk us quickly through her contributions to the research. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Am I going the right way? Oh.
Perfect.
Great, so I'm just going to talk about what we're calling our task 3, which is this inventory that Joel mentioned. And basically, as part of this project, we've assembled myself, another faculty, and a couple of graduate students to start conducting this inventory of policies. And so we are basically trying to scan the policy environment, meaning with a particular focus right now on local government. And I would be very interested in hearing from this group. I know water districts are a type of local government, but as city planners, we're a little less familiar with that policy environment. We would very much like to hear from you, you know, what kind of programs, policies you're currently implementing. Where might the barriers and gaps be in relation to water specifically? Because you'll see in the inventory table that was provided, we're mostly focusing in on long-range plans and policies and the programs that fall out of that kind of planning process. So we do probably need to expand a bit in terms of water. So the overall task is described on this slide. In particular, describing the inventory process that we've been through. We started by looking at some of the already produced SALT plans. There are a few of them in the state of California, and we started by reviewing those. We also looked at the County of San Diego and tried to focus in on the jurisdictions where there was actually currently agricultural production. And so we limited our inventory to the local governments where there is production occurring right now. And so what we're doing now, you see in progress, is scanning these documents and trying to synthesize and identify potential barriers or gaps in the policy environment. So we're hoping that this work will basically support the identification of initiatives that are necessary to sustain the industry, to conserve lands for agriculture. And I'll just leave it at that. And I think Cody's going to talk next.
Perfect, thanks, Sherry. Yeah, and lastly, we'll bring up Cody Hale, who's also with the Resource Conservation District, and she'll quickly highlight some of the results of the outreaching phases. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good to see faces that I haven't seen in a while. Thanks. So in order to get to the policy phase, we had to first propose many options to whittle down to these three. And the way that we did that was through an outreach phase with a producer needs assessment. And that was modeled off of UC-ANR's grower needs assessment, which was done in 2018. And with their support, we helped change it up a little bit to sort of get the goals that we were looking for and the answers we were looking for from folks to fit this project. In winter of 2021, this was created, and we distributed it with the help of partners at Food Shed, at Mission, as well as at the Farm to Institution Center. And those folks were integral in sharing this directly with farmers and ranchers, because they would get on the phone, they would go out in the field, and they would add somewhat of a personal touch as well. And they got a lot more information that way. We also offered this online, so it was shared throughout that they could do it by themselves. But I think that personal touch was really helpful. There were some eligibility requirements for this producer needs assessment. So folks had to be farming or ranching in the San Diego region. They had to have been in agriculture in the last 10 years. So they had a little bit more recent take of what the world is like. And within those 10 years, they had to have been doing it for 3 consecutive years. So there is some investment in that. In addition to that, we were able to collect 99 total, and 84 of those were digital and 15 were in person. So again, thank you to our partners who were able to distribute that. And we're aware that that is a small sample size compared to the mass amount of folks who are producing here in our region. This is why, as I'll explain, we are really valuing the qualitative data that we received from this survey. And there are other surveys like the UCNR survey, as well as the every 5 years, the USDA Ag Census, that has a lot more quantitative data that we use to support our survey as well. Also, farmers and ranchers are sometimes hard to reach, very, very busy people. And there's a lot of concerns around privacy. And we're keeping that very top of mind, very priority for us. And when we do share this data with folks, we will fully de-identify it so that it cannot be traced back to them because their privacy is something we really value here as well. So that was closed in May. This is just a map of where we were able to collect responses from. And as I mentioned, we really took the qualitative data into consideration, as well as the type of policies that we were able to land on. It mattered differently to different demographics. So for example, small farmers, folks under 5 acres, and new farmers were most concerned with getting more land access. That's a really big difficulty for them. Water was across the board, as I think we all understand. And years in agriculture was kind of a varying factor for the workforce element of things, because folks who have a more established operation were struggling to find consistent labor, whereas folks who are just entering maybe didn't feel they had the workforce skills or training to work on their new farm. So we're trying to address all of that, knowing that there is a wide variety of need. As I mentioned, the qualitative data is really important from this, and we got a lot of that at our listening sessions. Thank you. There are a few people here in the room who attended those. We had 2 of those. We had one in February and one in May. And these were folks that we directly invited after we sort of did 2 rounds of the survey collections, so that we could hear from people in certain areas that we felt were either underrepresented in other studies or we wanted to learn more directly from. So for that first listening session, we had a lot of small farmers. And the second listening session, we had smaller and newer farmers. And so the second listening session, we invited farmers who had been in agriculture a little longer and had larger operations. So we got to hear directly from folks in a more direct one-on-one method. All that to say that in the survey, these were some of the options people had to choose from as their primary production and profitability concerns. So as you can see, there's a lot of them. The number one for both of these across the board for everyone was extreme weather. And I wanted to recognize that, as it is not on our policy focus list. As Joel had mentioned, feasibility is a huge part of this project. And we are aware that that is a large undertaking and that there are other programs currently addressing that. For example, UCANR has a lot of agricultural advisors that support things like irrigation efficiency in the terms of drought. The city of San Diego is working on a climate action plan. The county is working on a regional decarbonization framework. There are people addressing this. So we felt that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we decided not to focus on that. But it's worth mentioning. And another piece that was very important to everyone was streamlining regulations and programs, essentially reducing barriers to access to a lot of these, whether it be grant programs, assistance programs, technical assistance programs. There's a lot of barriers to access for that. So with that, with the 3 policy topics that we've chosen to focus on, we're using that as a lens for all of them. So how can we streamline the regulations and programs affecting the 3 policies that we're focusing on? So yeah, it's our outreach update.
Thank you, Cody.
Yeah.
So as you can tell, there's already been a lot of work put together for this program, and we've got, still a little ways to go. And again, thank you for being here, because I think these policy meetings are super important to help us guide us in the direction to drill down even deeper to those working groups and really focus on where we're going to attack these policies and regulations and programs to better help everybody in the ag community. So moving ahead, we're going to get to sort of the meat of the program, and this is the pleasure to have 4 presenters today that are going to highlight 4 programs from their respective agencies and water programs, and help us better understand what those programs do, how they contribute to the region, how they contribute to ag. And then after these 4 presenters, we'll go into a open forum and have kind of a discussion as a group and maybe put our heads together to see where we can go to have some sort of conclusion to today's effort. So to start us off today, we have Stephanie, is it Roman or Roman? Roman. And she's with the city of Escondido. And thanks for being here today. And I will pass the baton over to you and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Roman. As I previously mentioned, I am with the City of Escondido Utilities Department. So essentially, we are the water and wastewater agency or district for the City of Escondido. And today I am here to talk about our MFRO facility for agriculture. That stands for membrane filtration reverse osmosis. And I'm going to try not to get too engineering on you guys because I know sometimes we engineers can get a little engineering. So stop me if I get too detailed. So here we have a map of the city of Escondido. We are the water purveyor to city residents as well as some county residents locally. So our water service area actually does extend into the county of San Diego. And we treat approximately 26,000 customers with water. As far as wastewater goes, those typically bound to the city limits, although sometimes we work with LAFCO to allow some county residents to sewer to our Hale Avenue Resource Recovery Facility, which is our 22 MGD wastewater treatment plant that we call the HARF. And we serve approximately 142,000 people, customers, wastewater. Recycled water is produced, Title 22 purple pipe recycled water is produced at the HARF currently at our wastewater treatment plant. We have the capacity, we have the design, I shouldn't say we have it, we're designed to treat 9 MGD and produce Title 22 recycled water. Currently, our average demand is 3.5 MGD. So in 2014, a concept was developed to extend the city's existing Title 22 water out easterly. The city of Escondido has a rich culture in avocado, citrus, ag growers. And in an effort to preserve that tradition, a concept was developed to extend our Title 22 recycled water easterly and treat it further so that it would be suitable for ag irrigation. Through a series of negotiated agreements, our local ag users agreed to take the treated water when it becomes physically available. And we also included a target to reduce chlorides and some heavier salts because it's been found that those higher chloride levels can be detrimental to the fruit. And Eddie could probably talk a little bit more intelligently about that. But so that was one of our targets with these agreements. The concept also included the conversion of an existing potable water tank, the hogback tank, to recycled water. That's the picture in the lower left-hand corner. And then we constructed a new potable water tank at the same site. But in high demand situations, the system has the availability to be augmented by potable water and raw water to ensure that the end users are, that water is always available to the end users. So the recycled water, the higher quality of the recycled water with the reduced level of chlorides is achieved through a facility that is, we have the capability to blend the water, and the facility uses the membrane filtration and reverse osmosis processes. And this is known as the MFRO project. So that's the city's MFRO project. So I don't know if any of you guys can see this now, but this is Escondido. The hearth or the wastewater treatment plant is the far left, the purple, I believe, pin on the far left. That's the wastewater treatment plant. This is where our Title 22 recycled water is produced. And it is then conveyed to the MFRO plant, which is the furthest left blue dot here. So Title 22 water is conveyed to the MFRO site. These were previous sites, locations for the MFRO plant that we had to move as a result of public input and change in city council. We actually had to move the site, which was unfortunate because we did have a pipeline in the ground already at the time we were directed to move the site. And as a result of that, moving the site further west resulted in an intermediate booster pump station here noted by the green dot to help push this advanced treated water up the hill to the converted hogback tank, which is shown by the yellow pin. So the MFRO facility is located in the city of Escondido. People who drive around the city might see it. It's going up on Washington near the 15 and Washington. As I mentioned, so the Title 22 water that's produced at our wastewater treatment plant at the hearth is conveyed to the MFRO facility. And this facility is sized currently to to treat 2 million gallons a day. And then this product water is actually quite pure. And so we blend it back with the Title 22 water. And we will be producing approximately 3 to 5 million gallons a day of water to send out to our ag users on the eastern side of our water service area. So the MFRO plant is currently in construction. IBPS is currently in construction. And I believe we started construction early 2021, and the projected, estimated, cross your fingers, anticipated, I want to throw all of those words in there, construction completion and operational start, we are projecting for late summer 2023. And at that time, the water will be available to the end users.
That's a question. So what water are you using? Is that like sewage water or?
So we collect the city sewage at the hearth, the Hale Avenue Resource Recovery Facility. That's our 22 MGD wastewater treatment plant. And we produce Title 22 purple pipe recycled water at the treatment plant.
Oh,
that water is then conveyed to the MFRO plant and treated additionally with additional processes, membrane filtration and reverse osmosis. It removes a lot of the chlorides and higher salts to make a more pure form of water.
And is that just for ag, or is that also for household use?
So we have an existing Title 22 recycled water system in place right now. Our large users are Sempra. They use that water for their cooling towers. We sell water to Rincon del Diablo Municipal Water District. They provide recycled water for landscape and to some of their residential customers. We're moving toward making that a service for, like, EDI just went in on Washington. They're using recycled water for some of their processes there. But largely this MFRO facility will be serving ag users. So essentially we have a valve to shut off the water coming back. If anybody takes water off of this line between the MFRO and the IBPS, which is the green dot, or the hogback tank, which we will be filling, they will be getting the more pure blended water. But the goal of this MFRO project was to provide this higher quality water to the ag growers to preserve the history and kind of culture of growing in Escondido.
You have a question in the back?
Priscilla?
Sorry, yeah, can I ask? So with the construction of the new facilities, is how much is that going to increase your treatment capacity and then like how much water you're able to bring out?
So we have the ability for the Title 22 water to produce up to 9 MGD. Right now, we're producing 3.5 million gallons. That's Title 22. The MFRO plant is going to treat up to 2 million gallons per day. We take that pure water and we blend it back with Title 22 water. So the overall production of the advanced treated water, let's say, will be between 3 and 5 million gallons. And it's really going to be dependent on what our growers use. So we have the ability to pull back. We have the ability to produce up to 5 MGD in the first phase of the MFRO project. So the overall project, and right now, we actually have a offshoot. Well, it's part of the overall MFRO project, but we are in construction from the yellow dot. We're putting in for our first phase users, the recycled water distribution, ag distribution system. That pipeline is currently under construction. And that will provide the first round of this water to our first round of ag growers.
Do you have any sense of what % of the overall ag demand that MFRO water will be servicing?
In this first phase, no, I don't. I would have to look. I'd have to look at the numbers on that. I can tell you in this first phase, we're targeting, I would say between 5 and 7 of the larger growers in our community. Okay, so just to wrap it up here, I know I had 5 minutes, sorry.
You got plenty of time.
Okay, so the MFRO plant, IBPS, it's a design build, currently in design build, $65 million project. And we are funded by 4 sources. We have an SRF loan, state grant, the Prop 84 state grant, the Title 16 federal grant, and then city CIP budget. And with that, I don't know if we wanted to hold questions till the end. You said we were going to have kind of a question answer. But
Yeah, I think we could just do it after every program. So I think it's appropriate now if there's any other additional questions or comments for Stephanie.
I just wanted to
Take them program by program.
piggyback off what Stephanie said. City of Oceanside has, I'm not sure if you're familiar with their program. I used to work there over 20 years and I'm involved with Pure Water Oceanside. So just to clarify for everybody, and what we were doing in Oceanside was the recycled water is good for irrigating like golf courses, maybe soccer fields, like grass. The MFRO that she's talking about is a little bit higher quality water than recycled, and that gets pushed to the farmers because it's tailored with less salt for like avocado and citrus. The next step, the logical step, would be to make it potable water drinkable, but California's regulations don't allow that yet. So there's no regulatory environment that would allow any of us to take that water and turn it into drinkable water. That's about as far as we can go is the MFRO facility or advanced treated water. It's literally one step away from being drinkable.
Yes.
The next step would be to take that water and put it into a water treatment plant that treats like raw water and makes it potable. So it's the state regulations, and this is called indirect potable reuse.
this is not IPR yet.
Oh, okay.
So to clarify, yes, next logical steps eventually would be IPR, DPR, which is indirect potable reuse, a direct potable reuse. And we are, what was your name again?
Robert.
Robert mentioned, it's one step beneath IPR, DPR. which would allow us, which is governed by the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and we're not quite there yet. But direct potable reuse would be taking the even further than MFRO treated water and sending that directly to the water plant for treatment and distribution. And then indirect potable reuse would be taking that water and sending it, like for the city of Escondido, to Lake Wolford, which is our local water source, or Lake Dixon, where we pull water, and then having it some sort of retention time in the lake. That would be indirect potable reuse. And then after that time has expired, then the water is treated at the water plant and distributed into our potable water system, which is completely separate than our recycled water system.
How does the water get to the growers from your facility that you treated?
So from the MFRO, as I mentioned, the most recent MFRO site where we are constructing the plant, that water is conveyed via pipeline to the intermediate booster pump station, which pumps the water up to our converted recycled water hogback tank in the eastern portion. It's in the county, on the eastern portion of our water service area. From that tank, we are currently in construction on an ag distribution pipeline that will provide water to the growers who have worked with the city to give us easements for pipelines. And then at that point, we work with the county health department to do all of the private side conversions.
That brings up my question. So as you're building out that construction, about how far east are we talking of Escondido, or in the general area?
We are talking Mountain View, Cloverdale, Rockwood, Cloverdale, San Pasqual.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
I'd just like to say thank you to Stephanie, because she's been so important in our water availability and what's happening with this. And unfortunately, Escondido hasn't been out ahead to talk to people about what's going on. But one of the important aspects of this was Escondido's not doing this because they like growers. First of all, we've tried to get back on the radar of Escondido many, many times, we in the agricultural community, because they had pretty much written us off. Escondido's water prices were so high, we were going out of business. And luckily, we were able to come to Escondido. They didn't bring this to us. The growers brought the idea to Escondido and said, you know what, Escondido, you've got a big problem. Your outfall pipe is almost to capacity, meaning that the water they were treating and sending out to the ocean was going to be limited. They were in a real bind. And we said, why don't you turn that water around and we'll take that water. And during storm events, there's a huge issue, because then they wind up not being able to treat this water and it goes down a stream and they get punished for that by the regulators with all kinds of fines and many other things. So we were very, very lucky to be able to put this together. And with people like Stephanie, you cannot imagine the problems associated with this project. They're from A to Z. But hopefully we're going to have that water. It's going to keep us in business. But the key point is that, yes, we're very fortunate to get this treated water. But what we're doing is taking Escondido's waste and being able to repurpose it. And that's huge. And as far as I know, there's no one else in this whole San Diego County that's doing anything even close to what Escondido is doing. And I think you should be very proud.
Thank you. I'll say a couple of things about that. So I got to the city in 2014 when Craig was working on this project. And yes, the outfall is a consideration. I don't know that we're at capacity with water conservation and whatnot. That might be an outdated statement. But the outfall, we have a 33-mile outfall that goes to the ocean, and every pipeline has a life expectancy, right? So eventually we'll have to do something to that pipeline, replace it, line it, et cetera. We're never going to get away from sending flows down the outfall. So it's going to have to be replaced or lined or something at some point. But I agree with Eddie in that the push to become more self-sustainable, helping the ag growers coming to an agreement with rates and chloride levels and whatnot. Also kind of lends to the IPR DPR of becoming a more self-sustained water agency. So yeah, it's been a fun project, definitely a fun project, and we're getting there. We've had a lot of challenges, even just in the construction of, I mean, the MFRO being relocated, the plant itself being relocated, pipeline in the ground that we have no use for, the addition of a pump station, and then, yeah, anything from angry homeowners to Native American bodies to, it's all over, but it's fun. It's been a fun project.
And it also keeps an important business sector here in Escondido.
Yes.
You know, the contribution of agriculture to Escondido, again, is very underreported, but not only to mention the jobs, but the environment, the carbon offsets, the ambiance, the framing of Escondido. Otherwise, you're going to look at nothing but strip malls and housing developments. So we're very, very lucky to have that.
Cody?
I have a question about the 2 MFRO locations that are no longer.
Yes.
Were those, I might have answered that question, but with 2 of them, would there have been more capacity, or were they going to be a similar amount of capacity to process through the one, or is it not a capacity?
It's not a capacity.
Okay.
So they would have produced the same
Okay.
amount. It was it was more of a political, we had a change in council, and we had some public feedback that, you know, a lot of the public will see this as a wastewater plant, and they don't want a wastewater plant in their district.
Stephanie, I have a quick question. You said that the Title 22 water is going from 3.5 million gallons per day to 9.
No, okay, so our average daily production of Title 22 at the heart is 3.5 million gallons, but we're designed at the heart to treat and push 9 million gallons out.
Gotcha.
But right now we're producing 3.5.
Gotcha. And then, so what is the capacity, or what is the percentage in capacity between Title 22 water and potable water that's purchased by the city?
Potables. We don't purchase potable water. We get our water from Lake Henshaw,
Okay.
which is owned by VID. We transport it via river and canal, Escondido Canal, to the VID Escondido water treatment plant, where we treat raw water and produce potable water.
So what is that percentage of capacity that you take from Lake Henshaw compared to Title 22? Is it like 75% that you're bringing down from Lake Henshaw?
Gosh,
Okay, I can follow up with you.
I'd have to look at the numbers, but it's a very small percent.
Okay,
Very small.
just curious.
percent.
Any other questions or comments for Stephanie? Cool, we'll move right along. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, what a commitment from the city to put the significant efforts and resources into something so vital. So
And the
appreciate
growers
it.
have been
Yeah.
great to work with, so.
Okay, moving along, Darcy, see you already getting up, chomping at the bit here, so thanks for coming. And Darcy's with the Mission Resource Conservation District, and she's here to highlight the irrigation efficiency program that they run.
So how do I advance the slide?
You push down.
Or the arrow to the right.
And can anybody hear me? My voice doesn't carry very well.
You use a mic, there's a mic there
I can use
too.
the mic. So how do I turn that on?
Yep, it's on. It was on. It's on.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning.
I'm Darcy Cook. I'm the district manager of Mission Resource Conservation District. And I want to thank you for that great presentation because I've had some questions about that. I've heard a lot about it from growers, and I also appreciate you keeping the wastewater out of the ocean. Honestly, that's the other end of that problem. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a really quick brief overview of what Mission is, because there's some new faces for me here today who may not know about this resource conservation district. So we were established in 1947 as a San Luis Rey Soil Conservation District. We're located in Fallbrook. We engage with our community in northern San Diego County, from Oceanside through Bonzo to Rainbow and kind of around Camp Pendleton and Duluth. And we work with landowners, residents, municipal governments, public agencies, nonprofits, and the state to provide free technical assistance to our community. Collaborate with the other two RCDs in the county, Greater San Diego and Upper San Luis Rey. And we also work with Team RCD in Riverside County, that's Temecula, Elsinore, and Murrieta. That's what team stands for. Okay, so our agricultural water conservation programs are basically community-driven programs. So we work with our community, in this case, our producers, to provide incentives for increased water conservation and efficiency. So we've worked with the San Diego County Water Authority since the 1990s. And we currently have some 3 sub-programs under our contract with them. We provide irrigation system evaluations, and these are where the grower system is reviewed and evaluated, and a report is provided to give the grower some information on inefficiencies in the system, distribution, uniformity, evapotranspiration rates. Then we have the AIEP program, which is essentially the same kind of thing, but it's an incentive program that provides rebates of up to $550 per acre, or up to $5,000 per property for irrigation upgrades. And then this entails the pre-evaluation and then the post-evaluation as well. We also have a soil moisture sensor cost share program. This is also to provide incentives with rebates up to $5,000 per property for soil moisture sensor systems. And that's not currently funded right now. That will be funded sometime before the next fiscal year. We also partner with Team, and we're primarily looking at San Diego County here, but this is just to see what some of the other counties do sort of within the same area. It's a very similar program to the one for the San Diego County. Also an AIEP program, the Ag Irrigation Efficiency Program. The rebates are for a little bit differently priced, up to 50% if they're eligible for the cost of system upgrades. They also have a crop swap program. SWAP stands for Sustainable Water Agricultural Production, I'm sure. And that's a crop conversion program on ag properties that have at least 2 acres of current production. And it allows, the idea is to save at least 1 acre-foot of water per acre per year. And these typically are avocado groves that are converted, sometimes citrus, and they're usually converted to a variety of other things, but most typically avocados to citrus, or to wine grapes, or to olives, and to cut flowers. And then finally, some of our other ag technical assistance includes irrigation water management and conservation practices for NRCS. We have an RCP program which provides irrigation evaluations along with conservation practices. And then we also connect growers to a network of agency resources, including CBFA, UCCE, UCANR, and NRCS. When growers call and have issues or problems, we do our best to direct them to the answers. So thank you. That sort of ends my brief presentation today. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Darcy. Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Does that cover all of San Diego County, all those programs, or is that just specific to that area that you had highlighted up there, San Diego County?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Does your program, does it cover, like the rebates, stuff like that, if efficiency upgrades, whatever, does that cover all of San Diego County?
No, so there's an eligibility requirement, depending on what program you're looking at. So how it sort of works is there's a pre-inspection, and then, there's eligibility requirements that, would include the amount of acreage, some of the other issues that go along with that, the irrigation efficiency, and then the rebates are, suggested, the components are then suggested. The grower purchases those if they're eligible, and then you get the rebate, and that's, like it was for County, $5.50 per acre or up to $5K.
But are they only limited for users in your district?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what he's
Oh,
asking.
I'm sorry. No, that actually is with the County Water Authority for most of the member agencies. So there's 24 member agencies total. The contract has typically been for 21 of the member agencies, but FPUD and Rainbow are removing themselves from the County Water Authority. So those agencies will be outside of this program.
How do I know which one I'm in, or how would I find that out? I'm either by the border, by Tecate, where Potrero is. How do I find out about that if I qualify for some of these?
Oh, what district are you in? What water district are you in?
I have a well, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there
Well,
is
if
no
you have a
water
well,
district.
then that's a whole separate.
Yeah.
If you're purely well water supplied,
Yeah.
then that's a different thing. But Greater San Diego has a wet contract that could offer irrigation. I don't know how your contract is quite set up, so maybe Joel can talk about it.
Yeah, we were able to find state funding and Jorge, you're familiar with the pump efficiency and irrigation evaluations through that. So, but that's kind of a patch to try to fill in that gap. So, well, we can talk more about program extent later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Mission has been the only and the main provider of that service for decades now.
Oh, okay.
Sir?
I just want to say I've worked with Mission over the years and you guys are fantastic. You've saved so much water. You've helped so many growers, extend their business into profitability. Very, very important. I just wanted to ask you on your crop swap, I approached the San Diego Water Authority several months ago about a program that is in Rancho, California, where now they've added avocados. They'll actually pay to remove old avocados and put new avocados in. And the water authority went back and forth and essentially wasted my time for several months because they couldn't figure out what to do. And they turned it over. They said, well, you need to talk to your local water purveyor, which I did in Escondido. Escondido said, well, we don't have a grant writer. We can't do anything. But when you brought that up, I was just wondering, perhaps I could speak to you sometime to see if we could duplicate what Rancho California is doing. And the whole concept is that if you can pull out these old trees that are not producing and not paying their way, that you're able to put in new trees, perhaps in a dense planting, and not only be able to stay in business, but also to reduce your water simply because of the dense planting. So maybe I could talk to you about that a little later.
Right, and I'll tell you a little more about that right now if anyone else is interested. So that we support that program for Team RCV with Rancho, California. And so what they do is it's typically avocados, right? Because they're a thirsty crop. So they'll chop down a number of the old trees in the grove and interplant with small trees, which take less water to establish. The bigger trees, the older trees require a lot of water. The new, and with the rootstock program, that's a separate side of that. There are new varieties of avocados that are more disease tolerant and more salt tolerant. So back to the water being salty around here, avocados don't like that. So that's been a very effective program up there. And Eric Larson reached out to me months ago with Mike Lee from the Water Authority to discuss this, and it just sort of died. It wasn't really clear how that died. I think it was going to be maybe work with the Farm Bureau, or although Hannah was on that meeting. So
It went nowhere.
okay, well, I was curious because that was a really good potential opportunity, especially now that they have the rootstock available again. For a while during COVID, that rootstock was not available. There were huge fires in Santa Barbara a couple of years ago. We basically bought up all of that rootstock, and then there wasn't any available for down there, but that capacity is back up. So I'd love to talk to you about that.
Anyone else? Thank you, Darcy.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Eleanor Walker with the County of San Diego, and she's here to present the county's Waterscape Rebate Program. So
Eleanor, thanks for joining us today.
Okay, so this is gonna be really quick. I've only got one slide.
Perfect.
And so the Waterscape Rebate Program launched in August of last year. It's spearheaded by the County of San Diego, but it also has partners with the Mission Resource Conservation District, as well as the San Diego County Water Authority. And it provides rebates to residential, commercial, and agricultural properties throughout the unincorporated area of San Diego County to help property owners improve their local water quality and save on water, amongst other benefits. So Darcy talked about the agricultural efficiency program, but some of the other rebates that you have access to are to remove some grass, which might not be as relevant to the growers, but I think what is relevant to the growers are some of the rain saving rebates, which can help you capture rainwater. We are working with some growers to install large cisterns on their property so that they can capture the rainwater that falls on their property, keep it on site, and then use it for irrigation purposes. And then you also have other rebates to also help irrigation efficiency, such as smart controllers. So those are based on weather-based irrigation controllers. You have some septic tank pumping. So those are sort of our main rebates. And as always, we always welcome any questions or feedback. We're always looking to see how we can make these rebates more accessible to people who live in the unincorporated area. And you are eligible even if you are on well water. Oh. Yes.
Can you help us understand the jurisdictions for the county rebate program versus the water authority rebate program? Or do they cover the same area?
It does get a little bit confusing. So the Waterscape Rebate Program, some of the rebates, including the rain saving rebates and the septic tank pumping, are only for areas that are in the unincorporated area, so under the jurisdiction of the County of San Diego. And then you have areas that are serviced by a member of the San Diego County Water Authority. So those areas, they're eligible for all of the county water authorities rebates, which are the turf replacement rebates. They also have rain barrel rebates and smart controller rebates. So if you're eligible if you're in a service area from the San Diego County Water Authority, you're eligible for these areas. And then if you're sort of in both areas, because there's an overlap, then you're eligible for all of the rebates. And the county does increase the San Diego County Water Authority rebates. And then if you're like in sort of east only and unincorporated, but not serviced by the San Diego County Water Authority, then you're only eligible for the county specific funded ones, which are the rain saving ones, and the septic tank pumping one, and the rain friendly pavement, which helps you convert existing driveways to permeable pavement. Yeah.
Anybody else? That was short, and sweet. Thank you, Eleanor. Got me back on schedule.
Great.
And last, we're going to pass it right back over to Joel, and he's going to highlight the water supply overview of the county from the Water Authority.
Hey, everyone. We would have loved to have our partners at the Water Authority here today. Unfortunately, COVID is rife and their office is on lockdown. So I will be jumping in to give a little bit of an overview of the regional supply that Mike Lee might otherwise have done, or Tim Bombardier. Before I jump into that, I just wanted to highlight this flyer that's going around. This is something that Darcy mentioned, and it has a lot more detail on it. This is the state-offered program called SWEEP, State Water Energy and Efficiency Program. As Ernie knows, it can be very difficult to apply and arduous and even impossible. However, it is an amazing amount of funds for really important resources. So some of the things we want to talk today is about how to make sure San Diego producers are more eligible to apply. And it'll, once you have completed a pump efficiency test, it makes you eligible for all sorts of irrigation system upgrades, as well as energy upgrades like solar panels for your pump. But I'm going to jump over to the regional water supply. My qualifications in this are not as a member of the Water Authority, but I have studied water resources at San Diego State in their graduate program, and I did get to participate in the Water Authority tour of the Colorado River Aqueduct. So I've got a little background. I know a lot of you are a lot more knowledgeable than me, so if you'd like to correct me, feel free. Microphones are on the tables. Firstly, I'd like to emphasize that our water supply, and this is from Metropolitan Water District, is largely imported. And you can see here the many different sources that our water supply comes from. Emphasize on the map for Metropolitan is also these sources from the Sierra, like the California and Los Angeles aqueducts. But for San Diego, the vast majority of our water comes from the Colorado River. So if we break that down a little bit more within San Diego, this is a map of the member agencies of the San Diego County Water Authority. And so just like Eleanor was explaining, a lot of those areas fall in the unincorporated area, but then there's others who are completely off the grid. They just use their well water or local reservoirs, and so they don't, they're not on this imported supply. And there's 24 member agencies. Some of those are cities like the city of Escondido, and others are independent special districts. Same structure as our RCDs are set up as a special district. And so just looking at where that imported supply comes from and where we're at, this is from last night at 10 p.m. This is where we store our water from the Colorado River. These are our two major basins, Lake Mead and Lake Powell. And if you look at the lines on those buckets, that's where the water levels are typically at. And below that, we would see a shortage. And so right now we are in drought conditions. So our major source of water that we use for this region to feed, I believe, about 30 million people throughout the lower Colorado River basin is in short supply currently. Now, Mike Lee at the Water Authority will tell you that San Diego in particular has done a great job of preparing for this through conservation efforts and through storage. So we have about 6 years worth of emergency storage based on projections because we've been buying more water than we need to put into our expanded reservoirs. But the regional outlook is not great. And the Water Authority is really aware of that. So this has happened before in the late 80s and early 90s. We had a catastrophic drought. And at that point, we were buying pretty much all of our water from LA, from the Metropolitan Water District. They had a monopoly on the rate. And so with the shortage in supply, the costs went up. And as you can see that on the far left, that little circle, the little blue sliver is what we were getting from local surface water, 5%. 95% was coming from the Sierras and the Colorado River. So strong reaction from the Water Authority based on that cost. Then, and also the shortage to say we need to diversify who we're getting that water from and our sources. So the first step was to say, okay, well, are there alternatives to buying it from the water, from the Metropolitan Water District, but still getting it from the Colorado River? And that's where the quantification settlement agreement came out of with Imperial Irrigation District. So that allows us to buy a lot of water from farmers in the Imperial Valley at a much discounted rate. We're still paying them 30 times what they pay for water, but for us, that's a discount. And so that allows us to avoid paying those full rates to Metropolitan. But in addition, they've diversified a lot of the supplies coming from other sources. So as you know, the desalination plant has been constructed. Also, there's been a lot of conservation measures, and that means that overall, the per capita usage of water has decreased even as population has increased. So the total regional use has not increased over time in San Diego, which is really remarkable. And the last pie chart here is the goal, the dream, to only have about a third of the water coming from Metropolitan and having a lot more diversification. You can see the recycled water slice of the pie, that purple one, growing quite a lot, probably based on the City of San Diego's Pure Water program. But something that makes us quite different from other parts of the state, if you look at this graph, this is which sectors use the water, and focusing on agriculture, a lot of the time it said agriculture uses all of the water in the state. It's the main consumer. They need to cut. And if you look at San Diego or the South Coast region, the orange is urban, purple is agriculture, and blue is environment. At the state level, it's about 2/3 to 3/4 agricultural use, and the remainder is urban. But here on the South Coast, urban users are the main users. And so most of the water we're using is going to household use and indoor use, but also landscaping. which is important for our nursery industry, let's say, but to point all the blame on agriculture in this case doesn't really look at the numbers, I would argue. And so we do have special allowances for agricultural users. These are some of the different rates. So the treated rate is higher than an untreated rate. Some of those programs are long-standing and are starting to be phased out. And then there's an additional discount for agricultural users should they waive their right to that water during a drought. So if they're willing not to have water during a drought, then they can have a discounted rate in the good years. But even with this program, we're seeing a constant increase in prices. This year it was a 3% increase. And so you can see from 2021 to 2022, the price went up. So that's not going to go away. And so leading into that, we've heard about a lot of great ideas about how can we address this for the agricultural industry. And for this particular meeting, we can't change the rates in the Metropolitan Water District. We're not going to build a new desal plant as this group, but we've touched on a lot of topics that we probably could address either by creating a plan together, doing a study, or even working on something directly. So I think the irrigation technical assistance makes a lot of sense, making sure there's more providers available, so Mission's not carrying the whole load on their own, making sure those rebate programs are more widely available and that producers know about them, and then using what Escondido is doing as a model for other municipalities with growing populations to think about how much of our water that we recycle should be dedicated to agriculture to make sure that our communities also have a local food supply and preserve that heritage. So I really believe that conservation is effective if we do it in a concerted effort. I saw a question in the back. So Adam. Oh,
yeah,
sure.
you know, I saw something in the news about one of the lakes that the water is actually rising. And I haven't seen any rain or anything like that. Lake Murray, the lake was rising and it was going into the picnic areas, parking areas.
Sounds miraculous.
Yeah, that was, I
don't know what happened there,
no,
but
they had an algae bloom. I think it was right at the treatment plant for San Diego's treatment plant. Not Lake Murray. Lake Miramar?
I mean, I remember seeing it in the news.
They had an algae bloom and they couldn't push that water to the treatment plant, so they had to treat the algae bloom.
Oh,
before they
okay.
could send it to the
Oh,
plant.
so
Yeah, yeah.
I think we just saved too much water. Something like that. You're like, wow.
Thanks, Joel. Thank you. Yeah. So which kind of is a good segue to our next part of the program, which is the heart of it, and kind of have an open forum and just open it up to everybody in the room to kind of discuss. Well, first and foremost, thank you for all the presenters that came. I'd be remiss to not thank you for coming and highlighting your programs. And as some of the users have mentioned, what great programs they are in providing incentives and keeping ag strong in our economy in our region. So thank you for all the presenters. Thank you. But transitioning real quick to our next part is I really do want to open this up to everybody, have an open forum. I think everybody in this room can contribute nicely to kind of helping us narrow down and focus some of the things that either have been existed for a long time or have just come online. It could be one of the existing programs that were just highlighted, or also I think in front of you, I don't know if everybody has kind of this white sheet. It's kind of a framework of policy in it. Oh, it's the back of the agenda. So on the back of your agenda, there's some example policy initiatives that kind of is just kind of a general framework for us to kind of work off of today. That kind of goes through some of the detailed stuff that may be associated with water availability and efficiency related to cost, efficiency, incentives, supply. And again, I want to just have a robust, open conversation and open the floor to you guys to help us better understand the end user, better understand the agencies that are doing the work, having the incentives, the programs, the policies, the initiatives, the regulations that go into all of that. And then in the end, hopefully we can guide our discussion in helping Joel and Cody narrow down maybe 1, 2, or 3 programs or policies or regulations that eventually we're going to set these working groups up to study even further to put together in our ultimate end game plan. So I don't know if anybody would like to kick us off. Joel, if you maybe want to expand on a little of what I said, and maybe you could kind of highlight a little of those initiatives that's on the back of the agenda, and then maybe that can help spur some conversation and dialogue, and we can go from there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to hog the space. I think that it'd be great to hear from some of the producers too. But just as an example, for the technical assistance, again, emphasizing why that's so important. This program is only available. There were, I think, more than $60 million offered statewide through this program, 300,000 per producer, and most San Diegan producers couldn't apply because there weren't enough pump efficiency kind of professionals who could come out and test people's pumps to make them eligible for the program. So thinking about how can we either hire more of those people or train San Diegans to be able to do that, or find people in San Diego who are already doing that to make sure that they can apply to programs like this. It'd be nice to hear from Eleanor too, what some of those barriers are to take advantage of those existing funds, because as we've written in the policy proposals, San Diegans already lead the state in terms of adopting conservation practices on farms in terms of water efficiency and using solar panels. But we're not being able to take advantage of these new programs to fund that. So yeah, that's one concept. And so as we talk about these different ideas that come up today, we'll update these slides and throw them into these different categories and think which of these might be something that some of the government representatives here or agricultural producers and also supporting organizations would actually want to work on together in the fall.
Thanks, Joel. I think that slide that's displayed is kind of maybe a good working document, like you said, to work off of and have conversation too. So does anybody have any interest on kicking off some sort of debate or conversation or dialogue, or what they feel is most important, whether it's cost, efficiency, incentives, supplies? Like Joel said, what are the major roadblocks to water?
So I think, looking at the water industry as a whole, it seems like we're starting to get away from using water once only, right? So Pure Water, Oceanside Pure Water San Diego, and the project that Stephanie's done with Escondido. And we need more financial incentives to get water districts to undertake these projects. They cost a lot, right? It really costs a lot, and you're producing a little bit of water, but instead of thinking like let's say, for example, what if we had another source of water that we could bring into the county, right? And we were able to turn that source on and bring it in. We're still going to be charged a high rate for that water, but why not continue to reuse the water that we've already purchased, right? Locally amongst the different water districts or cities. So it's wasteful to use it once in your house. It goes down the drain. It goes to what we call a land outfall, and eventually makes it to the ocean. It's just a one-time use. Let's use it multiple times. But where's the financing to make that happen? Stephanie identified state revolving funds and grant opportunities and stuff like that. But it's not just building the facilities. Then you have to work with the farmers that want that water and get the pipe from the facility to the farmers. That's a huge cost. And then they have to convert their on-site irrigation system to recycle or the MRFO. That's another cost. So there's a lot of costs involved in doing these projects. But in the end, what I feel is using water multiple times, in the end, it's going to save a lot of money. Right? And and if you can use local sources multiple times instead of the imported water. And you were correct, San Diego County, because of the earlier droughts, is very forward thinking, and that's another issue that's come up. We talked about the water districts. Sacramento says it's a drought and we want a 25% cut across the state. San Diego County is ahead of the game. We don't need to take that cut. But same with the business, the farmers and the business owners, if we say, when you tell a water district or to take a 25% cut. It's like telling the business, okay, cut 25% of what you're producing. Still maintain everything, but you can all, we're in the business of selling water. We need to sell water in order to make money to maintain the infrastructure. We don't profit anything off of that. The infrastructure continues to age. We still have to supply water. So that's a disconnect between Sacramento and San Diego County. San Diego County still gets punished, even though we're way far ahead in our conservation act. I think there's a political disconnect there. It hit us 5 years ago like that. It said you got to take 25% cuts. We're good for a couple more years. We don't need it.
I can add to that a little bit. I agree in that, when you're in the business of selling water, water conservation on your water side is affected, right? So our MFRO project is coming out of our wastewater fund. But in addition to the list of things that you just mentioned that are costly, you're then looking at ongoing operation and maintenance of a new facility. Who's operating and maintaining that facility? So you're looking at more staff. Who's operating and maintaining the distribution pipeline, transmission pipeline, the new tanks? Is it water, wastewater group? So yeah, there's a lot to be considered. A lot of the funding sources out right now are targeted toward the recycled water reuse. There's less funding for pure, not pure, but for potable water and wastewater than there is for water reuse.
Question to that is, how come there's not more like effort going into like desalination type projects? Because I mean, we're right next to the ocean. We got tons of water out there. Why aren't we focusing on converting some of that water to drinkable water, or to use instead of buying from all the rivers and all those places where you can let that water kind of go into nature or whatever? Well, why aren't we doing that? Is there a bunch of challenges?
Desalination is very expensive. It's a very intricate, expensive process. So the desal plant, the site owned by County Water Authority, it's very costly.
Both for the initial installation of a plant like that, and then the rate for water for users ongoing. And that's just, if I understand correctly, it's because the energy cost is huge.
Right, and then water end users don't want their water rates to go up. But that's the end result of owning and operating and maintaining a plant like that.
So we're lucky to have it in a drought when we don't have to worry as much about these kind of snowpack in the Rockies and Sierras. We got our ocean water, but we pay for that privilege.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive water purchased in San Diego.
But if the other water is drying up, you hear about all the lakes and the other underwater going dry and stuff like that. Wouldn't it be in the long run better to do something like that?
Well, it's like a piece of the puzzle, like when you showed the pie, right? So you have these conservation, then you have recycled water, you have desal water, then you have raw water, which we purchase raw water, and then it gets treated like at the Escondido Vista plant, Oceanside has water treatment plant. The raw water is really inexpensive because it's basically coming from the Colorado and going right to the plant. That's where it gets treated. So it's a piece of the puzzle in diversifying the county's water portfolio. So it's given us a lot more options. And like the first pie chart that it showed back in the 80s, we had literally one option. Now we have all these different options. And then there's political ramifications of building another desal plant. Carlsbad went fairly easy because there was already an ocean intake there from SDG's plant. So they didn't have to do any kind of construction. But then you have the byproduct of what that plant produces has to go back out in the ocean. That becomes an environmental issue. So the brine, we call it brine salt. Yeah. It's expensive.
So it just costs a lot. Yeah, it's expensive.
Can I ask something to you, Ernie? About,
Oh, boy.
I mean, I know we're really focused on recycled water, but I feel like you have a real grip on kind of what the local supplies are, because you're on groundwater. How would this affect you, and how are you thinking about water you're operating?
I'm really sitting here thinking of which way to go with this. So we manage properties in eastern Sierras, which is in the Bishop Benton area. That's where we get some hay from. We manage the area here in San Francisco Valley, it's well water, up there it's spring water. I have contacts with property owners in Yuma, and he was talking about the 25%, just use round numbers. The one ranch we're buying hay from had 1,000 acres. They had to cut 25% because of the Colorado River water. That's 250 acres off of that 1,000. Now that pushes us to truck the hay farther, which we own our own trucking company, but if you had to go outright, the hay prices, we can't compete anymore. We're going to be out of business for much longer. And we're 1,000+ acre farm. And the groundwater we're having the big issues with from the first part of July, say July 1st to today, there has been a well rig in the valley every day of the week doing well servicing. And I don't know where the water's going. I don't know if it's, I started thinking about it. I was worried about if there was some construction being done on the dam. Are they doing any type of maintenance on the dam? Because our water level has dropped dramatically in a short period of time. And it's back to the landscaping. The #1 product coming out of San Francisco Valley is sod. I mean, where do you draw the line on different products?
Well, you were telling me that a lot of municipalities do draw the line there, right? That it's not necessarily allowed.
The what?
You were telling me that sod is not permitted to be grown in a lot of.
Some municipalities do not permit sod companies to on public land or city-owned property. The city of San Diego has 2 of the larger ones. At about 50 loads a month coming out of there. And that's it's then back to the recycled water. We have no access to recycled water. The city of San Diego did have a plant there, a hyacinth plant for millions of dollars. As soon as the grant funding ran out, lock went on the gate. It's still sitting there. And the water went the wrong way. It went towards the city, didn't come up over the hill to the San Francisco Valley. And now with some of the purifications, that's one reason we had problems with the recycled water was the salts and the chlorides.
So I wanted to ask some of the water districts or maybe LAFCO, because surrounding the San Francisco Valley, I've heard from other producers up in Highland Valley, you know, some of the wineries up there and avocado orchards, they used to be on untreated water from the Ramona Municipal Water District. And because of the decline in agriculture there, they're shutting off that program. And so people are going to pay the full treated rate. It's not a huge difference in cost, but it matters to a producer. And so what would it mean if, what would it take to provide that water from Ramona across district boundaries to other areas? Is that something that you all could speak to?
So speaking from LAFCO, I would assume that there would have to be a contract in place. Agencies and like selling water, sort of like what? So sorry, I'm like Stephanie was mentioning how they, I believe, sell water to Rincon, and so there was have to be something in place like that between 2 agencies.
It can get pretty complicated though. LAFCO is heavily involved, but like for San Francisco Valley, for example, I believe they're technically, is it City of San Diego?
City of San Diego, yeah.
So you've got the boundary. Some areas are unincorporated. They have to annex not only into metropolitan, but San Diego County Water Authority. Then once they're in those, which is can become quite costly, then there's the contract or the exchange agreement that's done between the new agency that you're annexing into and the city. So it can get very complicated. And I know LAFCO is, we've worked with LAFCO on properties that or unincorporated that have had to go through that process, even just for a couple of acres. It's quite costly. Yeah, exactly.
And back to your sweep program. It is a very painful process.
I mean, can you illustrate, I don't think people know what it's like to apply baby 4K, but
The pump efficiency one was kind of a rough one to deal with because at the time, last year's program, there was a pump efficiency company from Northern California came down. They were only here for 1 or 2 days, weren't they?
Yeah.
So something like that. But we didn't make it because of scheduling or whatever. And we had to have an independent company come out. They were expensive. And now I guess there's a program where you can ask for to be refunded or subsidized, whatever you want to call it. They're expensive. And each different company has a different way of testing. The ones that were down here from up north, they were just blowing water out and measuring it that way. And the guy that we had came in and he was able to do it just by meter reading. So, and the other thing that would help us out as a producer is technical assistance on the more modern sprinkler irrigation systems. That's our biggest problem. We don't waste water, but we run water 24/7. We're pumping over 1,000 gallons a minute. You can do the numbers from there. So, and we could cut if we had the proper. Okay, so our Northern California areas are all on central pivots, and they do everything with a remote control or their cell phone. Here we have to do everything by hand. And then in the desert areas, it's all flood irrigation. So we go through each different part of it. We would like to have some type of assistance. We've had assistance from Ali. He's came out twice now. As we've discussed drip irrigation. That won't work in our area. Just modernize our system. Our system's 60 years old. So you can figure how that would work. Very labor intensive.
Question for Darth, that sort of piggybacking off of that. Support programs that help people upgrade their efficiency. Do like those upgrades are the most modern, or does that have to grow too? Like the way that they're upgrading there?
I'm sorry, you can have to repeat the final
Yeah,
question.
so he's mentioning that they're looking for more technical assistance to modernize irrigation. And in the programs that you're offering, as well as support from the county as well, is that like, do you think that's room to grow into more modern things, or is it like, how is that funded too? How do they get the funding for the new types of irrigation systems, and is it like just limited, is it capped, or would there be chances to expand to, something like they can't do drills, so could they get a little more funding for?
Right, so, yeah, that's a good question. So, and a lot of, there is more funding coming down, especially under our budget. There's a lot of, obviously, especially for that country, and that fits in with some of the climate change programs. We're looking into some of that stuff. There are new technologies that are out there that we'll be looking to add to incentive programming. And we do have relationships with irrigation companies, we're going to be putting on a series of workshops, potentially, collaboration with Greater San Diego. We've spoken about that, where the various providers will provide some time to go over the newest systems, what's new, what's innovative, and then tackle questions and answers so that producers who have specific questions on their system will be able to ask. That's some of the stuff that we're looking at right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
But water is going to become more and more scarce. It's going to become more and more expensive. That's not going away. There's other places that have dealt with this. We need to look at lessons learned. What's Arizona done? What has Texas done? They had an extreme drought for I think over a decade there. Those are some of the things that we should probably start considering here in this county. But water is so like political. It's so hard to make changes. And as Stephanie mentioned with the Due South map. Well, it's extremely expensive, but how do we allocate funds from some other sources, maybe to pay for something that's critical as providing that? And maybe what are some of those costs that can be further mitigated or reduced, or, I mean, I don't know. So maybe that's something that the state needs to start looking at. Water is way bigger than my understanding, and I know it's like with issues and it's like that it's critical. It's critical to everything. The ag is not just our economy, it's feeding our people. It has to be done on a regional level. I have no answers. I have a lot of questions.
Look, I piggyback off that as well, as we're trying to keep it very local focused. I like that about this, because as soon as we do get into a bigger discussion of what is more prominent or statewide, it gets into more political back and forth. So I appreciate being here to listen to what the local problems are, what we're doing about that with the money that comes forward. I did see that it says that we have a shortage of technical service providers, people that have the experience in this and can help out. As Ernie said, he had to hire an expensive inspector to come in and to do that. And I wonder, is that just more of is that a shortage among the districts, among the conservation districts, among the different agencies that are implementing this, or is it a shortage statewide and beyond? That would be my question.
So I can address that a little bit. So our irrigation evaluators in the past have been trained through the Irrigation Association, so we're a member of that. Their training is pretty expensive. Their test is extremely onerous to get that certification. So that's a real cutoff for some of my staff. Also, it's really hard to retain staff. You know, these programs, these incentive, the technical assistance programs are not, they're funded, but part of the reason why our students get those monies is because we are not for profit. So we have no profit margins to speak of, and we're not well paid. So that's another issue with retaining. Also, the irrigation evaluations require a lot of driving around. So it's difficult work. You get in the car, you go to your appointments. Sometimes the ag ones take, can take all day, depending on the time of your bridge. Then there's some major computer work afterwards to go and do the mapping, to figure out where the issues were and figure out what the components that they recommend would be. So it's not a job a lot of people really want, right? What we do need in this county as well, and maybe some of the producers can mention this, is someone who can provide irrigation design, get the system design. So you're on a slope, and you have a grove with really old irrigation system, or you want to move to drip. It's a good idea. Or what is the best thing? That's something that would be a fee for service kind of thing, but we don't have that ability to provide technical assistance for that. So that's sort of the value added, I think.
Just speaking on behalf of Cooperative Extension here, they could be here today. They've got a few different meetings, but they run a great program. Jerry Spinelli is their main irrigation advisor, but he's only focused on nurseries because that's half of the ag industry here in San Diego, at least for our economy. And he said flat out, like, if they had 2 or 3 more copies of him, they would be completely busy all the time. So it's, they're just, people would use it. And it's great because it ties right into programs like what Eleanor and Darcy are talking about, where there's incentives once you've improved your efficiency to actually invest in the system more. Maybe you all could speak a little bit more to kind of limits to access to those programs or awareness, or are there any cap on those funds for how many producers could potentially apply?
I don't really have much to say about that right now, but maybe someone else will fill in some gaps.
From my part, I can say that, getting people to know about the programs has been a barrier, and then some, so that's always something. So spreading the word out. In terms of caps for the program, so you have like a property level cap, but otherwise, I think from a funding perspective, the funding is there for sustain it for a little bit. There are some parts of the program that
funding from different sources, so the funding levels can vary, but your baseline funding level is pretty well funded, I would say, for the next couple, I mean, probably not for every single property in San Diego, but there's available funding. At least for, and I can speak more on the ones that I manage, so they're like the rainwater harvesting ones. For the church.
Well, and just to elaborate a little bit, so the County Water Authority recently had a proposal to the IRWM 64 round 2, and the ag component was cut from that proposal. So additional funding will have to be looked for that. That's interesting because there was, there was a chunk of money there, and then they had to allocate it in certain ways, and they decided to remove the ag component.
We have the systems, we understand the systems that we need to put in place. We got that part, and Jerry was a helpful I met with him twice now over some of our stuff. Allie was another good one. That technical assistance, we don't have, we all combine that to figure out what systems we want. Now, the biggest problem we have is the funding to replace some of the systems we currently have, like a VFD drive, that type of thing. That's where we have the problem. I can't take the time away from my job as a farm manager to come out and go to all these meetings. We don't have, grant writers would really help us the most. That's our biggest problem. And I mean, Cody, you guys at the down the lakeside have helped us on the Healthy Soils grant. But like a lot of these ones that Darcy's talking about, it takes into consideration the smaller farmers or small producers. But when you're in the larger sector, I mean, our well bill this month was $230,000. I mean, $5,000 grant isn't going to do anything for that.
Yeah, and that's, we're hearing pretty much across the board from producers that they're not that interested in the CDFA programs. A lot of people don't want to apply for the Healthy Soil ones, that kind of steep. There's a lot of this. I think the word's getting out, and that's always an issue with producers. Really, it's getting the word out to people. There is a push now to reach underserved producers. But one thing about San Diego County, most of our producers are less than 9 acres. We have a whole range, but for the most part, they're small producers. And so it's a different kind of an issue than with someone who has, a big amount of acreage. And so some of these people maybe don't have the access to the information, or maybe the ability to complete these proposals. So that's something that the RCDs are working on. We provide technical assistance to help with CDFA grants. But even so, sometimes there's just a total lack of interest in it. They're okay. There's a reporting requirement. We have saved receipts. Not that producers don't do that kind of stuff, but it's just another layer of work for them. But on the flip side of all that, regenerative farming practices make a big difference for water efficiency. If you can put an inch or more of mulch on your ground, it will retain water, it will cool the area, it will do cover crops, same thing. I mean, there are some basic, old-fashioned, simply done practices that can make a difference for producers of any size. And I hate now when I'm so tuned into soil. I hate when I see landscapers blowing the dirt, and you see just this basic pan of dirt, just drives me crazy. But these solutions are pretty easily done. Compost is becoming available. You can't create your own compost from your waste, on your green waste. Compost is available. Good places. That's my skill.
Cody?
Yeah, for Eleanor, I have a question. Part of my job is outreach, so I definitely understand the difficulty. Getting it out there, people get too late to find all that kind of stuff. What kind of outreach efforts have you made, and what have you run into as a barrier for these rebate programs, for waterscape programs?
Yeah, so outreach has been a difficult, I think Tony addressed it best when she was here at the last policy meeting, where she just went, she made an appointment with producers and spoke to them. Maybe talked to them directly and find out what their specific needs were. But that's very time intensive. I don't have the staff to do that. When we have our, when we do meet with producers, our evaluators, social mention programs, or the programs that might be appropriate and of interest. So that's pretty good outreach. We've actually even gone and put posters at producers' mailboxes. We posted things at Grand Jettos. You know, a lot of getting to where they are. They're not really coming to where we are.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's broadband issues, especially as you get farther in the eastern county. You know, those people probably aren't on their internet. Or maybe not very effectively. So it's a little bit of a conundrum, really, figuring that out. That I've gone to farmers markets to talk to producers, and half the time it's not the producer. It's a third party or someone else, you know, sort of affiliated with the farm that's there. They're not the decision maker. They're not going to take the information. They know how to use it. So that's, you know, and COVID made all that worse, I think. Although as people pivoted to doing things on Zoom and online, that also provided greater outreach for some. But then sometimes that broadband issue was a real problem.
And for some of the other rebates, that I think this is more like the outreach for the agricultural efficiency program, because some of the other ones, we're really only starting more recently to do the outreach for those agricultural properties. When the program launched, we did focus on residential and commercial properties in the sort of initial stages. And now, you know, we're more looking now and like, okay, so agricultural properties can benefit from these soon. So trying to see how we can reach those.
Supply chain issue. That's another big one, especially on these grants. If you're, and I'm gonna get away from the water issue just for a second. With the air pollution board coming into play heavily in the farming side, we've updated a bunch of tractors through their program. We've waited 1.5 years now for a tractor because of manufacturing problems. To the water side, irrigation pipe is hard to get, and the prices have tripled. So, I mean, the supply chain and back to the grants, it's, a lot of them don't have the component for overhead. That's another one that's in the grants is a big problem. Like monitoring everything, you have to have a secretary. Most of our field people don't speak English, so it's really tough to get information to put inputs into the grant program under the overhead part. That's a big problem that we have.
So what would that look like, Ernie? Is that more local manufacturing of irrigation supplies? Like, how do we get around something like that?
You got to think way ahead. Like with the upcoming Healthy Soils grant that we're talking about doing, we've had to order all our irrigation pipe for that. We're probably 2 months out unless I pull some strings and try to get it from back east. Just the irrigation pipes aren't good.
It's a national issue.
Yeah, it's not just
So, like, we ordered valves, I ordered valves, it took 2 years to get valves. Like valves that you install in the street, they took 2 weeks to get those. We got a Cal OES grant for backup generator for our pump stations. And because the grant window is so tight, the manufacturers are like, yeah, we'll get that generator to you in 18 months, but the grant wants to turn around in 1 year. They don't take that supply chain issues into consideration of the time of the grant. We're running those problems. And then buy an F-150 to buy an F-150 like 3 years ago cost 25 grand. Right now it's a $45,000 truck. And there's no new cars on the lots, and they won't even give us quotes. They'll say when the truck gets delivered here, we'll give you a quote, but we're not going to give you a free quote. We're like, well, we can't give you a PO to manufacture. It's a mess.
We ordered a truck. You know what the production date is? 2024. That's our slot.
Last
2024.
Yeah. The last truck we ordered in July of last year. And three of them, they just got delivered last week. And those were Ford Rangers. Bottom of the barrel Ford Rangers. So the supply chain issues are Yeah, it's impacting everybody.
We can all march to Detroit, but if we can narrow back down to water.
No, but it all.
No, I get how it all
Giant
relates.
circle,
It's all
mean,
full
all
circle,
over
I
the
agree.
pipe, it's just, I mean, it's hard to
Yeah.
get. Yeah, and like I said, valves, it's crazy.
I think it's just back in the water.
Yeah.
Issue like that, I'm very new, so I'm kind of like learning a lot from everyone. But from my perspective, some of the stuff that I think Darcy was talking about, the rebates and stuff like that, I don't even know, I don't think we have access to those where I'm at. Because I got a drip irrigation system and it's like really old, outdated. And I'd like to be able to upgrade it, to bring it up to standard where I got a bunch of holes everywhere and I'm plugging them up and that type of thing. I also need some help with, a way to store water tanks. I don't have any water tank right now. I'm watering my 3-acre vineyard with just basically just regular a pump, and I got a pressure water container, which is like 80 gallons. So I can only irrigate when the sun is out. I'm totally off the grid. And so some of those rebates or type of things, if I could qualify for some of that, I would be able to install some water storage, be able to replace all my drippers, all my tubes that are damaged, stuff like that. And we don't have none of that in our area, right? So those are things that should be covered.
Yeah.
We
The
can
water
look into
tanks
that.
might be covered.
What's that?
Depending on your eligibility, it sounds like you're probably eligible for us to help with a cistern, which is a large water tank. With a cistern, which is a large like water tank.
Yeah.
Water storage.
I'm talking like about 10,000 gallon tanks.
So the way that the rebate is currently structured, we sort of look at the area that you're capturing water from, so an impervious area, and from there we calculate how many gallons that area
Well,
will
the
receive,
problem
and then we
is-
pay for a part of it. We don't.
Yeah, I'm not catching water. I'm basically pumping water out of the ground, right? I'm going to be able to pump water out to a 10,000 gallon tank so that I can use that for irrigation whenever I need to, not just, when the sun's out.
Right, and I think that we might not be able to pay for, but some of the other rebates can help supplement that slightly
I
by
think-
capturing rainwater.
I think what you're hitting on is the overall theme that I've seen between the last two policy meetings that we've had is a lot of the programs that are out there that are existing, there's a disconnect between the end users, whether it's helpful. You've indicated some of them just won't, you're not applicable or eligible for them and you don't even know if you are. And there's a disconnect between that education and outreach of what exists, what maybe you're not eligible there, but we lead you down a road that says, hey, this program could help you with, a 10,000, gallon water tank. So, and we had the same kind of concerns, questions and comments at our policy meeting last week with land access. And they brought up the same issues of where is the land? Where are the users? Where are the producers? Where can I do this? Where can I do that? And just hearing from my perch, that seems pretty huge and, monumental to kind of have that conduit of issues resolved. And, we talked last week about there's two programs that exist and they're not even connected. And there's users not being able to use one, but didn't even know about the second one. And it's kind of, like I said, along the same themes of what you just mentioned. And so, thinking from a 30,000 foot level, I really want to challenge you guys to focus on what are some whether they're main themes or regulations or policies, what can we really take away today that Joel and his team can drill down deeper on and evaluate even further to kind of help push some initiatives or policies or regulations forward. And I'm just, from my perspective, that education and outreach component is huge because all the things that we talk about, supply chain and, financing to the infrastructure, those are going to take a long time to do. Programs that are in place, they're in there today to help, protect, promote. How do we improve on that? I think that's a very important cog in the wheel.
I think there's another flip side to that, though, and I think is people have to be interested, right? So outreach is one thing. People get in their water bills, they'll get a notice a lot of times. People don't read it, right? There's stuff on the internet. You go to the San Diego County Water Authority. That's a pretty well organized site. It's got a lot of information. But if people are looking for stuff, that's part of the problem too. Now, as water continues to get more scarce and more expensive, then I think people will make more of an effort to look at things. Also, it's capital costs. A lot of small producers don't really have the capital to make these changes. Even some of the big producers, right? That's
Yeah,
an
I
issue.
get, I've always said, like, nobody took energy serious until the lights went out. And, it's kind of the same thing with water until that faucet turns off, it doesn't turn on anymore. People just kind of are disinterested and, oh, it doesn't impact me, but it really does. And, we're all in this together. So.
I proposed to the city of Escondido some time ago about ag ambassador position. And I think what's happened, at least throughout my lifetime, is that, as I mentioned before, ag has dropped off the radar. And it's not, it doesn't have the sizzle, it doesn't have, the media, it doesn't have any of that. And I think that unless there's somebody out there banging the drum about what agriculture gives and contributes, but the other thing that's very, very important is who in the world is going to go into agriculture? How in the world do you get enough land and you find a crop that's profitable to go into agriculture without the support of the community? And I know you can call it a subsidy, call it whatever you like, but if the people really truly believe that agriculture benefits a community for all the things it gives us, I mean, let alone the fact that the environment and what we're doing here in Escondido by helping the community with the wastewater program and some of these other things, the carbon offsets, you name it. You can either live in a community like this, or you can live in an urban area that doesn't have anything that's green other than that one tree that they put in the park. So I think it's very important that somebody steps up and is able to have a presence for agriculture, because there's such a void now that I'm afraid this area and much of California is going to be lost.
And I'd echo that. I mean, just my experience at the county working for Diane for 17 years, man, I pushed for a long, long time that the county, from the planning department's perspective, even needed an ag liaison, because there was just a huge disconnect when planners and engineers are reviewing projects and reviewing programs and all that stuff, and it lacked that ag component. It lacked that ag expert. So I echo those concerns and comments. And yeah, we have an ag weights, measure division, and maybe it's threading them in a bit more intimately or so forth. But I've always felt that there's been a disconnect with that.
There has. And let me tell you one other thing. Again, this is in the real world, that when growers finally are able to throw in the towel, and you've got 40 or 50 acres in the county, and you're thinking, well, I can put so many homes here and I can make this investment work. Not so fast. You've got so many regulations now that a project that may have 30 or 35 homes gets whittled down to below 10. And the grower can't even sell his land for homes and be able to at least make some money on it when we need homes so badly. And yet, when you talk to the politicians and all the regulators, sorry, that's the way it is. So unless ag can get some clout, and that clout usually means money, it means lobbyists, it means being in touch with the politicians. And unfortunately, the Farm Bureau used to have some of that, but I think over the years, for some reason, they've lost some of that. And we just don't have a voice. That's why when we put together Escondido Growers for Agricultural Preservation, we said, we're not going to make any difference in the state. We're not going to make any difference in Southern California. Maybe we can make a difference here in Escondido. And so that whole thing about, think globally, act locally, whatever it may be, it's so very true.
Yeah, all politics are local. That's where the rubber meets the road.
I think that's a really good point though about the Farm Bureau, because you would think that would be sort of a county-wide voice for agriculture, right? And it is. I mean, I think Emma's done a great job, but it's a membership organization, so it's not really county-wide. It doesn't represent the entire country, so it does make sense to bounce that back somehow to the county.
Yeah.
Well, the county has hired an agricultural liaison. I think they're mostly for long-term planning. So it's a start, but it can't just be for one department or one agency. Yeah. Thinking a little bit of,
That's right. Our clock's ticking.
thinking a little bit about apparently the Farm Bureau wants to start hiring farmers like yourselves who have had a career in it to mentor young farmers. So I think you'd find next week really interesting when we talk about that workforce development. But it's interesting to hear you say, well, the next logical step from a farm is a development, because when we do that, I don't know if we necessarily budget in the water that would be used by that new development. It'd be interesting to see an analysis of, well, is the farm really going to be taking more or less depending on the density? That's definitely something that we could do here to add to that conversation. I mean, we don't really like to count our water, it feels. And that's another topic where we kind of skirted around it, but groundwater is one of our local supplies and we don't measure it. But again, we were talking about funding for reuse. There's also a lot of funding for groundwater recharge. If that's something people were interested in, if it felt like there were basins that we wanted to focus on of adding more water from stormwater runoff, it could be a good resource that would be easy to pull environmental groups into, to say, hey, this has habitat benefits as well. So that's something that we wanted to pursue for a priority basin. It would be, a possible model project. I don't know if Tasha, you want to speak to that for the irrigated lands group about how quality and supply may overlap?
Well, I'm more dealing with the regulatory aspect side of things, but when you're mentioning the well recharge, I think that would be really beneficial for a lot of our members who use irrigation wells and also drinking supply wells. And if they can recharge it and have more water, reduce the total number of free nitrogen and improve their water quality, that would be a boon for the whole region. But I'm thinking particularly for like Ramona and other areas that most of their residents don't even have any type of municipal water source, let alone their farmers. I think that's a really interesting thing, and I didn't even know that there was funding for that.
Yeah, that's what I was about to piggyback on. So that what programs do exist?
I don't know exactly which department, but there's state level funding. It's usually from more of a habitat and environmental perspective, but there's agricultural benefits.
Okay.
That's really interesting.
So look into that.
I've got another idea also, and that idea is, what about if we had a grant writer for a lot of these different growers and a lot of these different areas where farming is still viable, that this grant writer would help not only writing the grants, but being able to go out, meet the grower, letting them know what's available. I'll tell you, the grant that we were eligible for, I started out on it and I pretty much threw it down after I looked at it for 20 minutes. If it hadn't been for Cody and her excellent help, I would have tossed it within 20 minutes. As I mentioned before, Escondido doesn't even have a grant writer to go after some of these programs, particularly with what they're doing with recycled water. I can't imagine that. I look at what the Indians are doing down in Palma Valley, and all those tribes and what they've accomplished. They're buying up the whole valley. And they're doing a lot of that, certainly because they help the casinos. That's not a bad thing. But they're able to apply for these things and get them because they know how to write it. Well, for heaven's sake, again, Farm Bureau and all these other things, asking for people to volunteer. A lot of times when you volunteer, you're not going to get great results. How do you tell somebody we've got a deadline, or how do you tell somebody we've got to have this done at a certain time and I want to see it on my desk? You can't with volunteer. I would be happy to pay somebody for results. And if I knew that I had a grant writer that could, you've got so many grants as Mission Resource knows that are available, from soil moisture to, better soils to this, that, and the other thing. Boy, we're not paper people, we're growers. And so, if you want to keep this going, And now we've got this carbon thing that everybody is so excited about. My God, they've talked about that for 5 years and they've done absolutely nothing with it. And again, where are the results? I don't see the results because we don't have the people that know how to get the results because we're not paying somebody to do it.
That's a really good point, I think, again, for the ag ambassador, because the RCDs would be a great resource to help with grant writing, but we need the funds to do that, right? That's a lot of time even for us to. But if there was maybe something we could do, I don't know exactly know how all the counties works, but if there really was something along, ideally, an ag ambassador, and then there was money to help help with grant writing, it could be parceled out to the RCDs or the Farm Bureau or wherever made sense. But again, it takes money on our end too to be able to do that. So,
This is the last thing I'll mention because thank goodness for your organization. We, many years ago, were able to put in 100 avocado trees here in Escondido through a grant through Mission. And we were able to take those 100 trees, divide it equally and put potable water on one, recycled water on the other. And that eventually turned into a master's thesis through Riverside. And then we used that information to go to Escondido to show them how important it was to purify our water before we put it on avocados. So without you folks, we couldn't have done it. We were lucky enough to be able to put that together with your help, to be able to write everything we needed in there to get that money. But without it, I don't know where we'd be right now. So these things work.
Sorry, I forget your name from Ag Weights and Measures, but I don't know, do you have any input or thoughts or comments to some of the end users, points to like this disconnect between education and outreach? And are there any resources at the county that an individual like him could use to, get these grants?
So what I can say is everything that's being stated in terms of education and outreach and going for these grants and the technical assistance that's available for it. We're very much aware of the difficulties that exist out there. And we've been trying to think of ways to help. I know we work very closely with the cooperative extension in terms of we have contracts with them on them to provide services out there. I know that they're getting more technical advisors that are going to be able to help in the future. I also know that there's the ag liaison at PDS who has been very helpful, but it sounds like there needs to be more done. It sounds like, I know that me personally, on some of the programs that I work with in terms of doing outreach to the community, the response that we get is not very good. Even though we're doing as much as we can to get the information out there. And I'm just not sure if it's because when we're disseminating it, are we overloading people? I know for my ag water quality program, anytime we go out to a producer, we give them a big packet and give them all sorts of information that they can use. Yeah, I feel like
Then it goes like this.
Circular file.
So I'm wondering if there's better ways for us to provide information, because as Ag Weights and Measures, we have access to a lot of information, and then we have access to a lot of the producers in their region. And we're trying to get that information to them, but we're not sure if they're actually receptive to it. So I mean, we'll continue to try, but I think there needs to be a better strategic way to get information out there.
I think you hit on a key thing, this whole ag ambassador idea. It should be UCANR, and that's really what they do. It's just that I think over the years, they've sort of changed from being more of the farm liaison in a way to research, which has been really important.
Yeah.
But it was a shift, right? So you would have less, as growers, would have a little less interest in the kind of information they would be getting. However, like you said, that research program ended up being a critically important thing. So there's kind of a happy medium there, but it's always easier to sort of reinvent something that already exists as opposed to create something new. So that might be something to think about under this policy framework, is how do we work better with UCANR? How do we make make them understand what our needs are here so that they can address that.
How do we improve that connectivity?
I think you touched on it though, Darcy, is that their comfort, because they're mostly academics, PhDs, they're not comfortable taking a stand on something and advocating for a need or going into this kind of policy aspect. So if it was within UCNR, it would need to be someone who doesn't necessarily have that academic background and is the bridge between them and the producers and some of the decision makers.
But they do have a lot of technical advisors, like throughout the state that they provide. So I
They
think,
have amazing expertise and knowledge,
right,
but being able to address certain like policies or ask for the need for certain incentives, I don't know that for scientists, you're trained as like being unbiased, and so they would feel they might be overstepping their bounds in some of those cases.
yeah, but if you're looking to address this education and outreach disconnect, I'm feeling that these technical advisors, helping them write grants, get through some of these hurdles,
Yeah.
that may be where it is.
Yeah.
In terms of weighing in on policies, I definitely understand where their disconnect is and why they wouldn't want to be involved with that. I understand. But in terms of this education and outreach, they really do have that capacity, right? You know, as they said, they get something from AWM. I totally understand. We're the regulators. We're not necessarily the people they want to read stuff from, and it goes in the trash. UCANR has more of that collaborative approach with the growers around here. And so I think it's a resource that could really be maximized more.
They've really struggled to get additional state funding. I know they've had a few members resign. They just had somebody new come on for integrated pest management, which is great. But every single staff person that they add, it seems like they need to go to Sacramento for that. So if there was some way we could support them in that and really demonstrate the need, maybe it'd be easy for them.
Well, picking a few people rather than look at the whole county or whatever the area is. How about picking a few people and really making an effort using those folks as a model for some of these policies and these ideas that you folks have? You know, if you've got some stakeholders that are on the ragged edge and they need to do a few things, like we talked about the crop swap program or some of these things. You know, I had talked to the Water Authority, I talked to Escondido, I think I mentioned all that. And these people are kind of looking at me like, oh no, that's too much trouble. You know, that's going to require something from me. You know, I'm going to have to talk to this person or that, you know, and take a few of these folks,
Right.
put your efforts into that, put your resources behind that. And then other growers are going to say, wow, these guys have it together. They know what's going on. I'm going to go talk to them. I can tell you all day long, I recommend the NRCS here in Escondido, because there's one fellow there in particular, Daniel Holtz, who is one of the best engineers on the planet. He is. Well, I hope he's still there. I haven't talked to him lately, but I hope he is. And they've helped us so much, unlike when somebody from the county ag shows up to go over your pesticides. These guys will actually help you with all kinds of, and they go from irrigation to erosion to building reservoirs, and they're just fantastic. And I'll tell you, everybody that I've recommended these folks to, they are so happy, and they're right here in Escondido.
So like a pilot program that would have some sort of like tiger strike team to come in and like help a couple end users or producers and show like the success of what the end game could be. And then once we can demonstrate that, it's just kind of waterfalls to, you know, the others to say that we can do it.
Absolutely. And again, not to bang the drum more for Escondido, but if we've got this project where we're actually going to have water, then it makes sense to look at Escondido almost as an island of all kinds of ag, and to get the city behind it as certainly a business sector that they need to concentrate more on, because all this money can flow down and just give you a better community. But if you're trying to go here and here and here and here, you know, I talked to SDG&E a long time ago about carbon credits and this and that. And I said, you're out here you know, planting 3 or 4 trees over that place and 4 or 5 trees in a park, and you're trying to get a big media thing. I said, we're planting thousands of trees. If you can give us some support on that, think of the contribution to the carbon offset and everything. Crickets.
Yeah, the carbon action plans don't really take add much into
Well, Escondido did better than most, but yeah, overall.
Sorry, what's that?
I think the one exception might be Escondido, where they did consider it a little bit more, but.
In general.
Yeah, I agree.
I do like that idea.
I think it worked.
Yep, have Dan mention his information, contact information.
Oh, I've got it.
I'd love to-
Dan,
Oh, sure, I can get it for you
Sounds
after,
like-
after the meeting, absolutely.
Dan's working regionally now, and Isabel Garcia is the new local rep. So
Also, Daniel got a promotion.
yeah, he's covering a few counties now.
Oh,
And that again falls in the TA category. It's NOCS is short staffed and can't process all their equip applications. But we're not gonna be able to affect that kind of federal level. It just falls into that broader theme of, oh, we don't get enough support necessarily.
I know Isabel, but if she took over Dan, then I know who she is.
Okay, I'm not surprised.
Are there any other programs or policies or on anybody else's mind, or
I have a
Cody?
question.
Yep.
So, the room in general, the slide that Joel showed that said that the South Coast region, specifically San Diego, is the opposite of water use in the sense that agricultural use is the majority from central to northern, and urban is the majority of southern. Where does the decision get made? I don't know if this is the state level, or if counties have any effect on this, when we're in drought conditions, 25% of ag water needs to get cut, if that's not the majority of our use. Where does that decision get made along the path?
I would imagine Sacramento, but correct me
Does
if I'm wrong.
county or anything have any impact on saying like, okay, we understand, but our use is actually here?
As I understand it, comes from the Department of Water Resources, and every county or water provider comes up with their own plan for what the drought conditions will be. And then that's approved at the state level. And that's kind of just locked in for when that drought condition finally hits the trigger point. And there's not a lot of flexibility on that. We've talked to them about providing more, but I don't know where that's gone.
The state sets the bar, and then every local district can have that flexibility to do more, but
Yeah, and in fact, San Diego always does.
there is
Steps
no,
up
yeah,
and says,
there
we're
is
gonna
no
conserve
lea-
even
yeah.
more this year.
there is no leniency to say, hey, we're example A in the state, can we do it a different way?
Yeah, especially because metropolitan is so
Yeah.
big. It covers Los Angeles and all the way out there. So what they set at their level pretty much always dictates to us what we're going to be able to do at any local level.
So maybe I can just highlight kind of what I felt, maybe start a conclusion here in the next 10 minutes or so, and maybe kind of, like I said, try to provide some guidance to Cody and Joel where we can go with drilling down deeper to put together some working groups and all that. But I think first and foremost, last week and this week, it sounds like the technical assistance is one of the biggest hurdles, and there's many components to that, which is a lot of education and outreach, and specifically, as you both mentioned, as both producers here today, the grant writing. And so that specific technical assistance is huge to what you guys do. So from my perspective, if we're playing off kind of what Joel has up here on the slide, is the efficiency of what we're already doing and getting that technical support out there and assistance and improving on that. And then, I'll play off a little of the gentleman who mentioned the financing to all the municipalities and special districts that are putting all these programs and capital improvements in place to make us more water efficient and so forth. And so maybe there's a financing component that needs to be advocated for. But I think that then goes into what Eddie, you mentioned, is that not all of those end users benefit from those changes, that infrastructure, that water. And so it really becomes a supply issue as well for you guys. And so I know Priscilla and Stephanie mentioned, there is a way to convey that water, but it's very challenging. And I don't know, maybe there's a way to kind of, dig deeper on that to see if we can make that process a bit easier. So I don't know if anybody else has anything more to add, but that's kind of what I kind of collected from the conversation today. So technical assistance and financing and supply issues. And so, maybe we'll give everybody one last opportunity if there's, input and comments and specific issues or policies like I mentioned, please speak up and help us guide us in a direction that we can, like I said, focus on a couple of these and make sure that, we can put an end product together that is meaningful and something that's tangible and something that's practical, so that we can eventually help, the individuals, such as you gentlemen sitting at the end of the table. So.
Yeah, kind of get it financial, but I think incentives, like, small producers, growers and stuff like that would really benefit.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
Question as an ag ambassador. There was a agricultural liaison, I know, but the idea of an ambassador sometimes. I know that's not specifically water, but I just like that idea, how it applies to this project for sure.
Yeah, I think that whole technical assistance umbrella kind of has that ag ambassador, the grant writers, the education and outreach. I think that's one of the biggest components that I've heard of the last 2 weeks. We even talked about last week about having some sort of like, one-stop shop of something where people can go and just access all this resources. And, like you said, I'm not an expert in any of this, and hearing it all, I get lost. And, last week we had CDFA come and say, we have this grant program. By the time she was done speaking, I forgot what grant it was, and so I do think there needs to be more collaboration and connectivity to all those resources out there. So it makes it easier for somebody like you. And like you said, you guys are out in the field every day. You're not sitting in an office and a desk and being on the internet and writing all this stuff. So we need to make it easier for you.
Maybe there's a way of connecting with like the producers to really analyze what needs do they have, and maybe have the grants that are applying to the specific needs. Instead of just saying there's this overall grant, but maybe ask or survey or somehow connect in that way. Because I think there's a lot of needs that maybe the grant people that develop these don't really know or analyze and know about.
And I think to your point, I think it plays into what you mentioned about some sort of pilot program is like, let's put together a tiger strike team of all these resources, go out to an end producer or a user or handful of them. What do you need? What can we do to help? Let's apply all those resources, show success. And once we can demonstrate that, then we can, open up that, umbrella a lot further. And then, other users can say, oh, it can be done. There are results. And that's momentum that we need.
This is not meant to point to me that because we've been curious about how LAFCO might help with this, because you look at special districts as a whole, and we have the whole county and then all the different levels, right? What do you think LAFCO could do to help better support ag? I mean, other than this grant is obviously one part of that, but what kinds of things do you see there? Now that you're learning so much more about these issues, because there's so many, it's so intertwined. All the things that we're talking about here are very complex.
Yeah, I think I'll echo a lot of what I said last week too, is like, I really think that some sort of symposium is needed for ag. And it mentioned to all the like, we are all lost. I mean, everything in this world is a competitive industry, whether it's water, whether it's ag, whether it's energy, whether it's land development, whether it's housing, whether it's homeless. I mean, when we talk to municipalities and governments, I mean, there's a priority list. Resources are only, so deep. And, from my perspective, ag, we're the 5th leading industry in the region. We're lost. How are we the 5th? And we, you're telling me we have no voice. And so I really feel some sort of, at some point in the process, and I don't know if it's tomorrow or I don't know if it's at the end of this, but some sort of symposium needs to be put in place that we go to agencies such as the County of San Diego, to the Board of Supervisors, to the LAFCO Commission. I know LAFCO's got a policy to do whatever they can do to protect and promote ag and
keep those agricultural prime lands in place. We need them invested. We need those people in those seats invested in agriculture. And that starts with education and the outreach first. And we need to go down to those hearings and we need to make our voice heard. Once we get that investment, then we can implement all these policies and programs and improvements and so forth. So I think that's a real big component.
Just to make a quick plug, as a reminder, my name is Claire Moss. I work in planning and development services at the county, and related to outreach and education. We are having a meeting tonight on the county's climate action plan specific to agriculture and conservation. It's going to be tonight at 6 o'clock on Zoom. It'll be more or less specific to GHG reductions as it relates to ag and conservation, but it is a meeting specific to this economy, people in this room, right? So we'll be talking about incentives, we're talking about rebate programs. It's primarily us trying to get a read on what is needed out there, where it lands, how people feel about it. So it'll be half informative and half us getting people's thoughts on different things that we're proposing. So I do just want to throw it out there to the room that is something happening tonight at 6 o'clock on
And
Zoom.
PBS is conducting that?
It's PDS, yeah.
You say it on Zoom?
It's on Zoom.
How do we get that?
That is a great question. Can I work
Yeah,
with you to
yeah,
send out some information?
sure.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's on your
You can go
website.
to the website. So if you search the County of San Diego's website for the climate action plan, it'll be a workshop that we're having tonight. I can also go over there and help you find it on your phone if that's helpful.
Okay.
There's a listserv you can sign up for
I
too.
think Joe said he's gonna forward it to me. so.
Yeah, I'll get it to you.
That's good timing.
It is great
Yeah.
timing. Yeah.
No, but I
Very
think it's
well.
those participations and, I worked for the board for 17 years and you have to remember 3 of those 5 members don't represent any unincorporated area at all.
Mhm.
And a lot of the farming happens in that area. Yeah, we've got all these, urban ag zones that are, concentrated in the urban levels, but the majority of it is in the unincorporated area. And when 3 of the 5 have no representation, we got to go down there and make sure that they know how important ag is.
Yeah.
So,
If I could,
Yeah.
maybe just to-
yeah, let's expand on the laugh guy. I didn't mean to
Yeah, I
answer
wanted
for you.
Just speak a little bit on that. So I think your question is really important, and I think that's what we've been thinking about at LAFCO is how can we better support the agricultural community? And that really starts with this first round of us participating in the SALT grant. And I think to Adam's point on kind of getting that investment from our commissioners, I think this first round is that investment, right? They put it on our work plan, said we're going to invest staff hours on ensuring that we can, move forward with this grant. Furthermore, we're looking at getting another SALT grant so that we can continue it. And one of the topics that we hope to cover if we're able to get this additional grant is something that you had mentioned is the carbon offset credits. So kind of looking at that, it's astonishing to hear that it's been going on or a conversation for more than 5 years and you're saying that you're not really seeing any result from that. And so those are things that, why it hasn't moved forward. So hopefully, if we continue the work, then we can kind of find out what are the hurdles. So I'm sure there are reasonings for why it hasn't moved forward. Maybe there's still something there. So that's kind of LAFCO's lenses. Let's be invested in the SALT program, continue to learn about the ag community, and hopefully be able to benefit. Furthermore, we have, like Adam mentioned, a policy on prime ag lands and defining what that means so that when we're on our day-to-day, right, day-to-day isn't just this grant, but our day-to-day looks like just an everyday proposal of, hey, this parcel, we'd like to annex it into this city, or we'd like to annex it into this special district. Where when we're taking that proposal and we're looking at that parcel, well, is that parcel zoned ag? Is it prime land? Should it be developed? Should it not? Right? Those usually approvals go through the county of San Diego and all of that, but also taking our lens when we're looking at that. And so I think there's multiple facets on how LAFCO is trying to, really empower or strive to meet the legislature's intent on having LAFCO meet the need of protecting agricultural lands.
Isn't LAFCO involved in the separation of Rainbow and Fallbrook right now?
Yes, we are.
And so when you have something like that, I think it's very important that agriculture has a voice in something so critical. And, if this is something that's good for agriculture, which I guess would be determined from Rainbow and Fallbrook directly, then having the connection with LAFCO and something as important as water, goes right to the top of the list. So again, there's at least within my little area of expertise, there's no coordination. There's no organization in all of these things. I'd like to ask somebody with all these different agencies, when was the last time you saw a representative from agriculture? Or do you even know who a representative would be? There's just a void. There's nothing there. And I can tell you that if we had this ag ambassador or whatever you'd like to call him, that position is worth $100,000 a year. And it would be based on a salary and a bonus on results. And then they would have a chance to renew that contract the following year. But if you want to take some of this grant money and apply it to a position like that and have this person be on top of this water issue with Fallbrook and Rainbow, have them, be down in the South County with maybe a recycling program or who knows where, or in Borrego with the overdraft on the aquifer down there and watching a lot of those growers disappear. Man, that person would be worth their weight. But if you don't pay them, you don't get the results. I think one of the reasons the carbon offset thing has gone nowhere, there's no deadline. All you do is shuffle the paper around and have another meeting.
And there's no action in the field.
Yeah,
No compensation for it.
that's exactly right.
That's our biggest problem.
Yeah, you want cleaner air, but you don't want to pay for it. You want all the groves and the beauty of San Pasqual Valley, but you don't want to pay for it.
We talked about that last week, is how do you value, maybe you call them ecosystem services or holistic co-benefits or whatever, but a farm's not just a business, it's a community asset for all these reasons that you've named. And you can put a financial value on that. That's not the whole value. There's like holistic value to that, but we haven't done the financial budgeting aspect of that to show. Actually, we do have that for rangelands, and it's a nice model that we could use, but it would be nice to have that for orchards and for vegetable crops too, so that it's not just cast aside.
Yeah, you've got all this brain power and all these different industries. I mean, if this was tech, you'd have the answer like that. But agriculture can't seem to get out of its own way because it thinks that, well, we've got these farmers, we're having a meeting. You got to get the people. When we put our organization together, the first thing we did was get a branding expert. He happened to be a branding expert in recycled water. That guy charted our course on how we would approach the council, the community, how we would communicate. We had a symposium, just like you talked about here at a restaurant in Escondido, at Cocina del Charro, where we invited supervisors, local politicians, the people that were designing the recycled water program, and this, that, and the other thing. And I showed a clip from Chinatown because I thought that was a big motivator, and so on and so forth. And it was very successful, but it cost us money. And what we did, I went out and asked everybody that had anything to do with agriculture, the local tractor company, the local fuel dealership, to contribute, because if you want the growers to stay in business, we need some money. And that's how we paid for it.
Well, I think you matched the brain power of Silicon Valley. You guys just wear overalls, so.
I don't know about that.
Everything crops.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Sure. To put you on the spot, I wonder if there's any kind of policies that might have come up today or more feedback that you might be looking for the inventory.
I think it's been a very rich discussion. I've been taking notes, and I think I'll have to digest my notes, and maybe we can regroup with this. But no, I don't think there's anything right now.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised from your analysis to see how many municipalities have their own agricultural water rate programs, not just the water authority. And if you look through this, you'll see that there's actually a lot of policies that are directly related to water. So open to all your feedback following the meeting.
Yeah, a quick question for San Diego State. Do you guys have some kind of a program where you maybe if students are interested in the agriculture
for kind of a research project or capstone project related to?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of, I want to do like a business plan for my.
Or the business
area.
school, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, some type of connection with the university. I know that they always do like a lot of stuff and it's
Yeah.
all theoretical stuff.
Yeah, I think that STSU would be a good partner with that. I mean, you'd have to connect to the business school, and I think those students have like capstone projects, maybe a business plan for local business could be feasible.
Yeah. Or there's some kind of a-
I'm not in that,
they're looking
I'm not in
for
that program, but I could help connect you. with
Yeah.
business.
But I mean, if they have some kind of an agriculture type of degrees or something like
We
that.
don't, STSU does not,
Oh.
but it wouldn't really preclude us from, reaching out and being involved.
That is gonna be our focus next week, though, is looking at the status of vocational training in agriculture in San Diego. So if you're interested, stay tuned next week.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What's
I
next
think it's
weekend?
here.
Workforce development.
Yeah, so next week we have a workforce development policy meeting,
Oh,
so
goody.
same time and place. So just to wrap it up, I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's, I echo Sherry, it's what a rich conversation. Very helpful to take a lot of what was said today back with us, and like digest it and eventually drill down deeper. But thank you, sir, representative from Assemblywoman's office, and then, all the other special districts, County of San Diego, the producers, thanks for being here. A very robust conversation, and thank you so much for,
I was gonna say,
real quick.
Is it possible to get like a copy of the sign-in sheet? with
Yeah,
these
we can get you a sheet of
information,
that.
like, If you want to talk to somebody or.
for sure. That's why we have it. Yeah, thank you again, and I